Wi-Fi, Wi-Fi lokalnie
Možda odmah nastavimo sa sljedećom prezentacijom, ako mi ćemo imati pitanja. Pod nazivom kako teče postupak ustupanja licenci, kako spajamo nauku i industriju. Reći na hvala da sve napisati.
This talk's all about how we're going to reach out and connect with other people. The first thing I want to think about, though, why do we have these different relationships? On one side, to give information and find information. What is the market size? Who's interested in our science? What can we do with it? The other side, to listen to the answers that are coming to us and also to be seen. So these are the four main themes. Again, it'd be great if it's interactive. Do jump in with questions at any point. I'd say these are the four people, sort of repeating myself slightly, that we work with. People who have the money, industry to take our product to market, academia to do better science, and the public so they know and love us. Now let's take this into more practical dimensions. I'd say there's three guiding principles to this. The first one, on the left, top left, the more people you know, the better. The more likely you're going to meet others, and the more likely you're going to hear things. So make sure you network very widely with a lot of people. Counterbalancing that, on the right-hand side, be careful of very shallow relationships. You're going to try and build some depth to your relationships, because that's how you get to know people, and that's how you get to hear things. So you have to try and do both things. Know many people, and have a few of them that you know a lot better than others. And the key way of doing that on the bottom is turn one-way information into a two-way street. So you're not just going to broadcast, you're going to broadcast and listen. Because by doing that, you get to see what they're up to. There's three main areas that we're going to do this networking, and that's online, in the print, face-to-face. And we're going to go through each one in turn and see how I suggest we do it at STFC. First of all, websites. Everybody talks about them, we've all seen them, but I think most websites are far too complicated. So I would say simplify them. You don't need a huge amount of information on your website. It's just to get people talking to you, and you're better off with a slightly shallower website that's easy to navigate so that people then start communicating with you, rather than something that tells you everything. I think there has to be an easy way to tell people where the new stuff is, so that those people who just dip into your website maybe monthly can quickly pick up on the changes. And also think about feedback. Make it easy for people to talk to you. So put your phone numbers, your emails, your Twitters on the right pages that are easy to pick up. And if you use things like Google Analytics, you can see where people are looking at your website to see where more information is needed. So for example at STFC we look at what grants they're looking at, more importantly, which grants they're not looking at. So if we see that there are some grants that we give that people aren't reading, we know we need to follow this up with a more traditional print or telephone campaign to make the public more aware of the grants that aren't being looked at. Blogs. I think rather than becoming a blogger yourself and creating your own blog, it's actually easier to comment on other people's blogs. They've already done the hard work of getting people to the web for you. Whereas if you start off and create your blog from scratch, the number of readers is going to start off at 0. Whereas if you go and comment on somebody else who's got 1,000, 10,000, 100,000 readers, you've got 100,000 people reading your comment. It's one of the first ones, something intelligent. So don't bother commenting once it goes off the first page. Very few people are going to bother reading that far. But do comment at the beginning to get yourself the first, second or third comment going down there. Do make sure the comments you put down there are intelligent and informed and useful. Nobody wants to read a comment that says, I agree, that looks good. But you want to show that you're an expert in your topic. Similarly, I think you have to be very consistent in your user IDs. I always use my name. So people can know that if it's on the different websites they go to, it's probably the same person. And there's nothing wrong with using your name if it's something then that they can put into Google and try and track you down. This is what it's all about. But I think I want to look at the four main networks that we use. Some of them are obvious. Who's used LinkedIn here? Good. A third of you are still awake. No. LinkedIn's a common business network. Not many people, a lot of people use it for their contacts, but how many of you bother to follow the discussions? How many of you bother to try and find people through it? How many of you bother to use introductions via LinkedIn? And I think very few people at that point will still be having their hand up. Do make the time and effort. It's not just about the number of people you have in your LinkedIn account, it's the number of people you're communicating with. Twitter, we all know Twitter, I'm assuming, it's a case of getting the right comments out there. But I think for me, it's YouTube and Facebook that are the interesting ones, aren't they? So I recently heard on the plane that Facebook is now too old, and that everybody stopped going on it because they found their mum and dad was using it. So I might be 12 months out of date on this one. On YouTube, being serious again, we're now using YouTube for our grant calls. And the first phase of the grant call quite often is a 30 to 60 second information piece that you've got to put up on YouTube. And then we're going through the YouTube submissions, picking a short list, and going to that short list, and the submissions are all published, then you please fill in a grant application. We're interested in what you're trying to say. I've also seen YouTube used where our scientists are explaining their invention, and they're just putting out 2-minute information clips about their invention that are easy to understand, and start sharing this YouTube link. That's what we're going to say. I think it's a really good idea. It's making the science very applicable and very easy to understand. The difficulty is trying to explain it in 2 minutes that is interesting to look at. And my advice there is to get friendly with your local media departments at a university and get some help from the students there. But as a powerful tool, extremely powerful. Looking at the print media, again it comes down to, do you use yours or use somebody else's? And just like the blogs, the first thing to do is pick up on somebody else's. There's plenty of magazines out there that have got a distribution far bigger than what you could hope for. And if you build up your reputation and your own contacts, consider doing your own media. I think the key point to take out of that is that it's repetition in a nice way. You change the context slightly, but change it each time, and you keep on repeating the same core messages. And that way, slowly but surely sinks in. And you need to always be thinking about who's reading it, is it the right audience? Don't bother putting it in the wrong sort of articles because you're just spending effort. And we spend a lot of time, again, working with local media universities because it helps their students make their coursework practical and gives us more bandwidth. The key part of the talk is about these networking events. And we run 2 types of networking events. The first type I'm going to talk about are specifically for academia and industry to match and meet each other. And the second is a general purpose community building. And this is because we have a campus where we're trying to bring industry onto our campus in a general format. And we're not particularly trying to sell anything to them, we're just trying to get across that our campus is a good place to do business. The hardest point for me on that slide is trying to like them. Is there anybody who does like going to networking events? Who likes the small talk? Who likes the circulating? I'll tell you now, it's tedious. And I do a lot of them. So if you all go into one and you come out saying, oh, that's boring. Yeah, it probably was. So you've got to think of your own personal techniques to make it interesting to you. There's a few networking events I go to regularly and you meet the same people and they become easier because you have a friendly chat that is half work, half social. But when you go to the first time to a room full of people, it's tough. So don't feel alone. The key point is follow any promises. You take somebody's business card and you say you're going to do something, make sure you do it. Because if you don't, there's no point going. And why go somewhere if you don't like it and then not get anything out of it? So if you are going to go, at least try and make sure you do what you say you're going to say, and make the introductions and all that sort of stuff. It's going to make it much easier for you in the medium term. Now let's talk about academic industrial matching events. And what we do with these is basically, we want to get industries to see our science, to try and get collaborations, to apply for some grants, to sponsor some PhDs, all the things we talked about in the earlier slide. And I would say that for each academic, you want about 5 industrial players, and you aim for about 3 to 5 academics. So you're going to have about 35 industrial players, 5 academics in the room. You have a morning and an afternoon. It's very useful to try and get an anchor speaker, somebody that people want to come and listen to, because that's how you're going to get people out of their offices today. So what does one of these events actually look like? In the morning, we give industry 3 minutes to describe what they're after, and academia 7 minutes. Academia gets longer because they're talking about a broad set of sciences, whereas industry should be talking about their needs. And when I say drop the obvious, the first time we ran this, we had 5 universities who all proudly told us they were the 7th best university in the UK, depending on which metrics you read. I found it very amusing that we must have 7 different metrics. And I also found it very amusing that they all told us it was 7th best. There's 140 universities in the UK to put it in perspective. So it's obviously good enough that nobody would have heard it, if you see what I mean. I just found it amusing. So we tell them things like, you don't need to say where the University of Oxford is. It's pretty obvious it's in Oxford. But do talk about the capabilities, talk about what you're looking for, talking about what you can offer, and do that to get the most out of it. In the afternoon, we have matching, speed dating. So we have one-to-one, 5 to 10 minute meetings set up on a timetable with the different industry and the different academics. And a very practical note on that side is we discovered it's better to keep the academics still and let industry move around. Otherwise, you end up with this big mishmash of people trying to find each other. And if you keep the academics still, if somebody hasn't got a meeting, it's obvious there's an empty gap. After a minute or two, people just turn up and sit down and do it. You can get some software to help with all this matching. If you try and do it manually, it really is hard work. You know, a glorified timetabling software. And speak to me if you want some details. Essentially, you have a common area where people can go when they're between meetings, so then you get serendipity. Please me on to the next. In the morning, obviously, you just need a big room. In the afternoon, it's really quite hard. You're trying to find 10 small meeting rooms. You can put 5 tables in one room, but people don't like it. They prefer to have separate rooms, and that's quite difficult. It's a big thing. Try and kill the wireless today and not tell people what the wireless password is. Otherwise, they'll start checking their emails and get distracted by work. So we try not to tell people the wireless password to keep them focused. And the coffee area, extremely useful place where people come and meet. Next, we're going to talk about what we call a general purpose community building event. And the one I'm going to base it on is the Technology Entrepreneurs Forum, which is the way that we're using to engage with our entrepreneurial companies down at our campus. And the way we've done this is we've got a few small consultancies to run it for us. Who's been to a typical business breakfast? Who's been to a business breakfast before now? One of you, okay. A typical business breakfast, as the name suggests, will be in the morning. But most importantly, you find it full of people like patent attorneys, lawyers, accountants, are about 2/3 of the audience. Out of the rest of the audience, half of it are your staff, because there's free bacon sandwiches and coffee, and the remaining 6 are the people you want to engage with. We looked at our general purpose business breakfast, and we discovered the half-life of people attending our business breakfast was 1.25. Meaning, out of 100 people who attended the first business breakfast, 25 attended the second, which drops down to 4 on the third attempt, which drops down to 1 on the fourth attempt. We hold these breakfasts every 2 months, so you can guarantee that if you start off with 100 people at the beginning, within a year you've lost them. And when we went and spoke to these people, we said, why are you not turning up? They said, instead of talking to patent attorneys, lawyers and accountants, we want to talk to each other. So you have to take a step back and say, okay, well, why are the patent attorneys, accountants and lawyers here? And that's because they're universal service providers. If you do accountancy, you can talk to anybody. So it's very easy for you to get value out of that meeting. Whereas if you're a business person, you only need one accountant. If every meeting you turn up, 3 people say, who's doing your accounts then? It's a really boring, tedious time. The other thing you notice at these events, they're all sponsored by the accountants, patent attorneys and lawyers because they can afford to pay the fees, typically £1,000 to £10,000 a year, which the organiser then uses to pay for the copies and the room hire. We decided to do a different model, and I went and found 4 small one-man innovation consultancies and guaranteed them there will be no patents, lawyers, accountants, or anybody like that in the room. They could each bring 10 genuine technology SME companies to the event, and I will find the budget for 40 cups of coffee, which isn't really that much money. The result has been that it works. We end up with 40 to 50 SMEs in the room, plus my 4 facilitators. 40 to 50 people don't mind 4 non-technical companies in there because they're 90% of the audience now. And I get at the moment, I've calculated 90% of the people return next month. So it's a massive change. The cost to me, 40 to 50 copies once a month. You know, it's in the noise. So if you want to really engage with your business community, I'd say that's a far better way of doing it. The difficulty is you have to explain to the people who previously sponsored your events why they're no longer getting an invite. You have to be quite diplomatic at that. My solution is we've now got 50 people, and I've gone back to my old sponsors and said, I don't want your money, but you have to come on the same rules as everybody else. Find 10 companies and bring them along. And that seems to work. I'm now going to move on to what do we do when we're actually at an event. Make sure before you turn up you know what you're going to say to describe yourself. I find it so amusing when somebody gets there and you say, what do you do? And they either give you this very rambling 5-minute sentence when you lose the will to live, or they stumble. If you're going to go networking, think who you are and have a simple sentence. Make sure it's brief, no more than 30 seconds. And if you do swap cards, make sure you follow up as I said earlier on. But most importantly, don't forget to move on. It's not rude to say, sorry, we've been chatting for a couple of minutes. I know you want to meet other people other than me, so I'm going to let you do that. And I'll make it easy for you by walking away. Rather than saying, I need to speak to somebody else, make it sound like you're helping them by giving them the space to meet other people. And that goes down well. It's a bit more polite. So now let's go into the practicalities. I'd say there's only 3 points you need. Hook, why, and who. Hook, get people interested. Why, are they listening to you? And who, what do you want to do with the information? Who you are. So this is a typical one. You start off, you say, my name is Ian Tracy, I'm from STFC. We want to tell you what STFC is doing with the science and how we're working with CERN to create companies. And if you want me, I'm at the back of the room. That's bad. The reason why I say it's bad is you start off with your name. To be honest, if you're doing one-to-one, yeah, do start off with your name. If you're in a mass audience like this, don't start with your name, because at that point nobody's interested. You're about the 4th person in the line, and people are normally thinking of somebody else, so why should they listen to you? They're not going to listen to me because I'm Ian Tracy. So that's a wasted sentence. So let's see how I would do it in this sort of environment. I would turn it to, are you a technology company? If so, I have £40,000 for suitable small companies to take CERN technology and turn it into a product. The next steps, come and speak to me. I'm Ian Tracy, and I look forward to talking to you. It's changed it completely. In the first sentence, the audience knows within 3 words should they continue listening to you. Oh, I'm a technology company. He is speaking to me. If you're not a technology company, you stop listening. £40,000? Oh, hang on, this sounds good. You've got £40,000 and he's trying to give it to me. I think I'll carry on listening. Then I explain what the money's for. Okay, I like the idea of that. What do I do? Oh, I've got to go and speak to that chap. Ah, he's called Ian. But now he knows why he's remembering my name, or she knows why she's remembering my name. The other thing I do is I send to her these stripy shirts, and it's not funny, but I always wear my stripy shirts, and now when I go to these events, they go, yeah, you must know Ian, he'll be somewhere with a stripy shirt. It just makes it a bit easier for them to find you. Also, don't get them too stripy or too loud, but that's just the risk I run. But don't be ashamed, don't be afraid to do those sorts of things. Right. Finally, if you want the slides, we will be emailing them out before I put that. I didn't realise that when I wrote this. But normally I say, if you want the slides, email me for them. And that way you get people to get in touch with you. That's the end of my talk. Any questions? Thank you.